I am in a hybrid program, so once every 2 weeks is when I have class. Also, it is 2022 right now, and I am not planning on posting these until I feel like it is safe to do so, because you never know if someone from your program finds out that you made a video, even if it's not offensive, if it could affect your status in the program. So we're gonna wait, which will also give some safety to me because of the travel routes I'll be following. So I'm in Philadelphia. I got here, as maybe you saw, by taking 2 Amtrak trains and a bus to this hotel. And my plan is to try to capture some of what my first days of school are like, because I think that would be neat, not only for anyone who happens to watch it, but for myself as well. I also want to share, I guess, kind of what it's been like up until now. This is going to be different from, I guess, most programs maybe, but we got our Canvas site, so like our schoolwork site, opened at the beginning of the week, so on Monday, and we have school on Friday. So we had a few days. Basically every class I have, which I think it's about 5, had assigned homework, so I went through and put everything into a Notion, which is like an online planner, so that I could keep track of all the due dates, and then I tried to do the homework. I'm definitely starting to understand what people say when they say that grad school is a lot of reading. I don't know how to like quantify it, but it feels like every class I have wanted me to read approximately 2 to 3 chapters, which might not sound like a lot, but textbooks can be pretty long. 2 to 3 outside documents, and then maybe do an assignment. One of my classes, functional anatomy, had, I think it was, I can't remember how many chapters in the textbook, and 3 videos, which doesn't sound that bad, but each video is a lecture, and I think the longest is 2 hours and 40 minutes. So had to get all of that done to come here. I did not get it all done. And we were kind of told that it was okay if we didn't get it all done this first week, and something about we'll talk about it tomorrow, so we'll see. I have been a little nervous about it, but I didn't get the functional anatomy done. My lab for that class, which is when I feel like I need to have reviewed the information, is the second day, so I'm hoping that by then I'll be able to work through it. So tomorrow they gave us a schedule of what the day's kind of gonna look like, and it looks like it'll be like introduction, get your ID, get your electronics set up, then a bunch of presentations, and then, oh, there's a lunch in between presentations, which is when we get to meet our buddy in the program. So like sports tend to do it where you have a buddy who's the level up, so we get paired with a second year student so that, you know, they can help us out. So I'm excited for that. And then at the end of the day at 3:15 we have class. I don't know how long that's gonna go. If I remember correctly, I feel like classes normally end on Fridays around 5, so that would be about 2 hours of class, but I'm very unsure because it had no end time, so I guess we'll see. I think the biggest hurdles I've run into at this point are just just knowing how to know what to take away from readings. Like, I can identify key points normally pretty easily. I didn't really have trouble with that in undergrad, but because there is so much information in all of the readings that we're given, I'm very unsure what is just for us to read over, what is for us to like memorize, especially in my, I don't remember what it's called, but our theory class. There was this whole like, I don't even know, it was so many different sources. I feel like it was like 8 different things that we had to read or watch, and you know, each of them have so many different dates and topics that I was like, oh my Lanta, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I took notes on what I would think might be important, but I guess we'll wait and see. And it's not like I'm gonna have a test this first week. Well, I have a open note functional anatomy test, or it's really a quiz, after, so on Monday. So yeah, I'm exhausted and a little worried about my, I guess, stamina for tomorrow, because like, it's a lot hotter here than it is in Frostburg. So we'll see. I think that's all I have. So I guess I'll see you next time, and we'll see if I can record anything. Probably not. Alright, so I did not film after day 2, but I did take notes. I was just exhausted, so I'm gonna read over those notes. This is actually, I currently am at the end of week 2, so I'll also talk a little bit about that as a bonus. So here's what I had to say after day 2 of OT school. So in classes, we did a lot of palpitations, so like feeling different structures of the body. We learned about like center of gravity while walking with walkers. We got free food again. And then we did a lot of interviewing each other, which might sound intimidating, but it was a lot of, here are the questions, go ahead and like talk to each other, ask each other, how does it feel to talk about these things to each other? What are you noticing about your body language, your nonverbals, etc.? Yeah, and by the end of the second day, I wrote that it feels like there's a genuine, it feels like there's a genuine energy of kindness, and everyone is so open. Unlike yesterday, I feel like we're already a cohort, and we have so much willingness to mix and mingle with each other. And I definitely felt that. I was so happy at the end of day 2, because after those interviews, even though it's interesting, because it's like, you're only asking a few questions, but you get to know the people around you so fast, and also they're so caring when listening to you that, I don't know, any hesitancy went out the window, and it was great. And then at the end I put, I do feel behind, as most people do, in actually memorizing the content we're being given, but although it's stressful, I really think it's going to make me a better person in learning to be more adaptable, meeting more people, gaining more independence and thought. So those were my notes. I will say something I don't think I wrote down, or I don't know if I talked about this, but as soon as I came home from school on both days, I would fall asleep and then wake up at like 8, do the things I needed to do, go back to sleep, go to school. I don't know if that's typical for a weekday program, but for us weekenders, it sounds like that's pretty much the consistent pattern I'm seeing, is everyone's saying by the end of the day, even though it doesn't feel super exhausting while you're in it, you get home and you've socialized so much, you've learned so much, that your brain's like, all right, we need to go to sleep. So during the second week, we got a lot more into, we had our first test, which sounds intimidating, but it was actually really easy. I think it was more of like kind of that christening into the program to help us understand what tests are going to look like. It wasn't really a lot of hard content. It was on like basically how skin relates to OT, scar management, the healing process, and then also the fundamentals of what different types of tissue are made of. So like not much content, but we were all still pretty freaked out, and it went fine. I'm trying to think of what we did. A lot continuing the theory of like, what are occupations, what does it mean to be an occupational therapist, but kind of moving more away from that. We got into kind of really breaking down what type of movements are in these occupations that we're watching, and then like what might some assessments look like. And then this week, so last week we did palpations, so like feeling the different structures, but it was more, this is what it's going to be like to palpate. This time these are actual things that we are going to test you on soon. So that was interesting. Very much the same after the end of a long day, exhausted, fell asleep. But I'm getting more in the rhythm of, all right, there's a bunch of reading, but the way to get through it is more, all right, look at the assignments. What do I need, or the assignments for this week? What do I need to actually do to complete these assignments? Do that first, get that out of the way. And then looking at, what are we going to be doing in class? What do I need to read in order to function in class? Doing that. And then, if I have time, doing the other stuff. So it seems to be the pattern that there's normally like 2 to 4 chapters of reading that I just don't get done. And depending on the reading, I might add it on to the next week, or I might just say, all right, I can't do that. So there was a section on activity analysis that I didn't get to read, but I think that's going to be really important, so I've put that at the top priority for the beginning of this week. But other sections on more vague topics that it doesn't seem like we're focusing on right now, I've been like, all right, I missed the mark, time to let it go. Which is interesting, because when I started, or before I started, I was like, I'm gonna try and do all the reading, which I definitely still am trying to do, but I understand, I don't know, I had this impression of a lot of people talk about how they give you way too much reading and there's no way you can do all of it. When people would say that, I would think, yeah, but like you should still try to do all of it, because that's what's going to make you a better clinician. And I still agree with that. I think I'm beginning to understand that a lot of the reading overlaps with one another. And that is because repetition makes things stick in your mind. But a lot of the classes have a lot of similar content, so you're reading about the same thing. And so that's where you start to be like, all right, I already kind of have a grasp of this. I can read it again and get the additional benefit from it, but I am strapped for time, and so I need to let this go. And then the other thing is, like, how much am I guess, studying or working on schoolwork? And I don't know if this is going to be the same for every program. I'm also in the beginning of my program, so, like, things get harder. But so far, it's like my first day back, so once I've traveled back to where I am from, I spend the entire day getting my assignments done. And then the next day, I spend the entire day trying to get all of the reading and extra stuff done. Well, the remaining readings and stuff. And then the third day, I'll probably maybe spend an hour doing stuff, maybe not. So for those first 2 days, when I say all day, I mean probably like from 11 o'clock when I'm brain awake to 5 o'clock is when I'm like very much focused, and then pretty much all the time I'm doing other things, but like flipping back and forth between taking notes, doing things on my phone, that type of thing. So that's 2 days of heavy work, 1 day of light work, and then I have train travel. And that's when I do my like remaining reading. So it really depends on that day how much I'm going to be working on stuff. So I'd say probably about like 2 hours of schoolwork. So that's 4 days of like working on schoolwork. And then I have class the next 2 days. And so like they don't give us schoolwork on those days, which is different from a normal program, but because your whole day is taken up by school, yeah. And then the next day after class, I take a break. So that sounds rough, but I think it's pretty comparable to like going to school every day. Like, that takes a lot of time, and you're being lectured to, whereas in an online program, you're doing your lectures at home. Oh, I also am so thankful that I chose a weekend program because we have 7 CODAs, so occupational therapy assistants, in our cohort. We have 2 people with newborns, lots of parents, lots of different ages, different paths, and so every time we're talking about something, there is so much discussion time built in that you get to hear all of these unique perspectives from different backgrounds and levels of experience, which is so helpful. Oh, and then the last thing I want to mention is that we had a really neat discussion about what is the difference between a CODA and an OTR. It wasn't in the lesson, but like that's where we ended up. Our professor framed it as your CODAs are the specialist in treatment. So like seeing the patient actually doing like those daily treatment sessions, whereas OTs are specialists in kind of that assessment, analysis frame. So doing a lot more of the paperwork. You're seeing clients, but you're more seeing them for their evals and their recertifications for insurance. And you, like depending on the setting, might have to do the treatment. There might be no CODAs. It's not saying that they can't do the treatment, but like normally that's how the role breaks down. And she really emphasized the importance of codas are not less than you. They often have far more experience in patient interaction. It's more like you are both practitioners, OT practitioners, who just have different things that they focus on, and so you really need to value them. And we kind of came up with a analogy. I don't know how well it works, but codas are PAs, so physician's assistants, and physicians, which might not be helpful if you aren't familiar with the two of them, but like patients often can't tell the difference between them. PAs can do a lot of medical stuff, but they just need oversight from a doctor, and by needing oversight from a doctor, it's not like they're being watched over. It's just like they have to check with them on some things. PAs spend a lot more time with the patient and do a lot of the point of care stuff, whereas physicians see the patient as well, but they do a lot more of those analysis pieces, more specialized things, and documentation. But they both need to work together. So yeah, that's our analogy. So I guess we'll see when I update you. I don't think I'm gonna do this every week. But yeah. Maybe when I feel like it's applicable. Alright. See you next time.